Hello everyone and welcome to another Modswell video. I'm your host Maxwell. Today we're going to be continuing with last week's video where we built a base for your load order. For those who haven't watched it, then it will be in the top corner right now. We left that video with the base of the order being put in place, and for anyone who is following along with what I'm doing, you should have used up anywhere between 500 megabytes and 2 gigabytes dependent on the choices that you've made. My base happened to include textures because that's important for what I do, but yours may not, and that is totally up to you. This part of the video is going to be entirely about shaping your load order. The one I'm building is going to revolve around Legacy of the Dragonborn, so naturally that's going to be a good place for me to start. Legacy is going to eat up over a gigabyte of my space, but I knew this going in, which is why I made certain decisions whilst building the base last week. As we have over half of that space left, because of the choices made, we can actually take this order a lot further than I first thought as well. And this is another mini tip. Try and be malleable when creating your orders. I said last week to create multiple copies of your base order, and that's exactly why. If a new mod comes out and you decide to pivot the idea at the last second, if you have a few sheets, you will easily be able to do this without having to go too far back. Anyway, whilst this is advice I believe in, I'm here to teach you how I make my orders, so let's get back to doing exactly that. The base order I created was boring. It looks nice, but there's not anything really going on, so that's something we're going to have to address. Legacy was a great start, but I wonder if we can fit a few more of these giant mods. I instantly went to check if I could squeeze in interesting NPCs because that and Legacy together would thematically make a ton of sense. People, items and scenarios all being more interesting. Unfortunately, half of your reserve space is simply not enough. I was a few hundred megabytes over, so I could edit things down somewhat. But then, I'm compromising the other aspect of this order. What I've done instead is take my own advice and create a separate doc where I'm trying to create that order for the future. However, for the purposes of this order, I would call that a step too far and might be something I make a separate video on at a later date. Something like how to trim the fat in your load order. Yeah, I actually really hate coming up with YouTube titles. After this setback, I have gone back to the ideas board. I could easily fit something like Beyond Reach and still have a ton of space to mess around with. Alternatively, I could add in Wyrmstooth as a cheaper alternative for a new land experience. However, I've gone for them both. Why not, right? A few new areas to mess around in is always good fun. I might take one out in the future, but for now, we have an entire gigabyte to play with. This is great. It means I have enough wiggle room left to fix whatever it is I need to fix. Here's where my life gets crazy though. I now head out to test how the order operates. I do this as the order is roughly where I want it to be in terms of what I'm building. It looks decent and it has a ton of new content added on top, including 2 giant DLC sized maps with their own storylines for tons of new hours of play. It's great to test now because if your order is currently working, then you know anything causing errors is coming from next week's episode, which is basically going to be revolving around the cherries on top, the final touches. Because we know the order worked before that stage, it means we can somewhat narrow down where the problem is with relative ease. There are tons of you out there that can go, thing A happened because of thing B, and that's great. You can probably ignore this stage, but I'm talking from a beginning standpoint. Another thing I think you should add in at this stage is the overall combat setup that you want to use. In the last episode I did put in Valravn, but now is the time to work out if that's how you want the game to be. This is basically editable the entire way through unless you pick something large and with potential conflicts such as CCO AiO. A mod like that I suggest leaving until your cherry on tops, because at that stage you'll also see what else is in the order and if it's worthwhile. As I'm considering that style for my build, I will leave this for now, but if you're considering something else then do throw it in and see how it operates. This stage of the building process is probably the easiest and also likely the one that you already had in your head. For example, I knew I was going to try and add in as many new experiences as I could. This can come in many forms, but for me that's DLC size mods. I want to enjoy the game as something fresh feeling. Right now, I am in a place where the order is roughly where I want it to be without it being rounded out and fun additions being tacked on. That being said, I am working on a second sheet where my goal is to add in interesting NPCs. If I do manage to create that in a way that doesn't compromise too much on quality, then I will do some background edits and show them next week. My orders constantly evolve. From the moment you see me on a brand new order to the day I release it, there's likely anywhere from 20 to 50 small edits, hundreds of medium-sized ones, and 1 or 2 huge overhauls. If you think you're making too many edits, you likely aren't. You're just trying to perfect your game, and that's totally fine. I've waffled on about not too much information here, but I do hope that what I have said has been useful. I could really have boiled this all down to a single line of Stage 2 of building your order is knowing which mods you're building around and inserting those on top of your base. Admittedly, that makes an awful YouTube video, so I wanted to add what I was doing as well as a few pointers or tips that I use when I build. And this is going to bring me to my next ask. If you have any pointers for how you go about your builds, then please do share those in the comments section, because this entire set of videos is all about learning how. If this video has helped you learn how, then perhaps you'd consider becoming a subscriber to the channel, maybe liking the video and sharing it with people that you know. All of that is incredibly helpful with growth and getting through that YouTube algorithm. I've left all of the usual links, including all my orders and some helpful communities to join for more assistance, all in the description below. For now, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.